Today, we're talking about defense for the Chicago Bulls, as we're going to be looking at why this team will be defensively much better than they were a season ago. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to slam dunk on that subscribe button, just like Modest Buzelis slam dunks in games. And so in exchange for slamming on that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Chicago Bulls. And so make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Chicago Bulls Insider family as we talk nothing but Chicago Bulls basketball. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it as we are talking about defense for the Chicago Bulls and why I believe this young core will fix a lot of the defensive issues that we saw with this team last season. And so I got a chance to look at an article here on ESPN.com, and it is looking at each team's weakest point coming into this upcoming season. And so this is what it says for the Chicago Bulls as far as their biggest weakness. And so just paraphrasing this. And so it says that defensive disruption is going to be one of the things that the Bulls are going to have to fix going into this season. It says that the Bulls were 29th in forcing turnovers last season, only ahead of the Utah Jazz. And it says that the Chicago Bulls dealt away their steals per game leader in Lonzo Ball, who averaged 1.3 in just 22.2 minutes. And it says that the Bulls traded for Isaac Okoro, and with him, he has not averaged a steal a game. And it says that Chicago will depend more on solid defense than disruption. All right, so look, I think that this team actually is going to be more disruptive on the defensive end than they were a season ago. And I think that there are several different factors as to why this team is going to be better on the defensive end. And so let's start with the first point, and it's going to be the young core. I think that a lot of people are really sleeping on the young core, and starting with Modest Buzelis, because, you know, we talk about Modest Buzelis and just what we saw offensively at the end of the year. But I think a lot of people forget that he was very good as far as getting block shots as well. And so I think that Modest Buzelis, who clearly looks like that he's much stronger than he was a year ago, I think that that's going to translate defensively. And so I'm not going to say that he's going to be a guy that is going to come down and erase mistakes like that and get shot blocks that way. But I do think that because he gets stronger, now he's going to be able to use that on the defensive end and make it tough for opposing offensive players to really get to their spots. And really, it comes down to rhythm and getting into your spots when you want to put up a jump shot. And so defensively, if you can make that player uncomfortable, now you have a chance to get some block shots. You have a chance to get deflections and things like that because you make the opposing offense that much more uncomfortable, you know, when you're guarding them. So I think that Modest Buzelis really, for as much as we talk about offensively with him, I think that he's set to really unlock some stuff defensively. And I could see him really playing the passing lane and getting out and getting runs to the basket that way. And then also, too, you know, that's going to help this team as far as getting more attempts, playing that faster pace, which I do think that the team is going to play a lot better this year in year two with this offensive system. Next, when we're looking more into this young core, I think a guy like Julian Phillips, this could be his calling card to really carve out a role for himself long-term with the Chicago Bulls. And so just going back to last season, there were a couple moments where he was off the bench before Patrick Williams. And so I think that he can take a step forward defensively. And so he definitely has the athleticism to go out there and defend as far as, you know, being pesky in the passing lane and everything else. But I think that he needs to gain some strength as well. And so I think that if he's able to come into this season with some strength and show that he can also be a guy that what you can do with him is he can be more switchable. Now you can take him anywhere from 1 to 4. I think that you can see this defense start to generate some more turnovers. They're going to get easy baskets that way. And really what's going to happen now is that you have an opposing offense really second guessing themselves, which is what you want to do. And sometimes, you know, what happens is through the course of the game, you're playing such good defense, they really go ahead and just go into mistakes just by themselves. And so you kind of force teams into mistakes. And so I think that if this team is able to do this with their young core, you can see this team take a step forward defensively there. And Dalen Terry, look, he's a guy that he can definitely take a step forward because he has the athleticism to do a lot of what Julian Phillips has done here. Let's see if he can take the step forward. but I think that that is one of the reasons why I feel like that this young core could be just more disruptive this season. And then next, when we look at two players that I do think are going to just show up from day one for this team and really help this team from a season ago, it's going to be Ayo Dosunmu. And so we talk about Ayo Dosunmu a lot. I think that he can definitely start for this team. Even if he doesn't start and he comes off the bench, he is going to help this team out a lot defensively because he's going to clean up a lot of mistakes. This is a guy that definitely can switch 1 to 4. I've said it before. He's not necessarily going to be the guy to stop a power forward or center if he gets switched onto them, but he is going to make it extremely difficult for that player to score, and that's all that you want. And so I think that with Ayo Dosunmu, you're going to get some identity on the defensive end. And so I think that that is exactly what this team needs, because I do feel like this is the year offensively that this team is going to really establish more of an identity with this up-tempo style of play that they want to play. But Ayo Dosunmu is going to be super important to the defensive identity. And I think that they added to that when they went out and then they got Isaac Okoro. And so I think that he's definitely in line for a good year because, number one, here's a player that got traded, and I think he's coming in much like Josh Giddey. He's got a chip on his shoulder, and I think he just wants to get out there and prove that he belongs, and also, too, that he can play some major minutes and really be impactful for a team. And so if he starts, I'm not mad at that. And if he comes off the bench, I'm not mad at that either, because either way, it's going to help, both units. So whether he's starting or whether he's coming off the bench, either way, Isaac Okoro is going to have a big year. And so I'm not even caught up on the fact that he is not average to steal a game, because I definitely think he is going to. And I also think that it's going to help his scoring because of that, because really with him, I don't think you necessarily need to run a play for him. And this is the perfect offense for him. And so if he can just be, a defensive irritant, which he's been since he's been in the NBA, he's going to get some easy points that way. I'd expect for him to get at least 1 or 2 steals a game. And I think that that is going to help us out a lot. And I just think that defensively now, what you're looking at with this team, as far as being a bit more disruptive on the perimeter, now you're going to see a team that they're going to start getting the deflections. They start getting more of the steals. They're going to start getting more of the block shots. And they're going to also, too, have to go into really trapping teams as well. I think that you want to try to get teams really sped up to where you can maybe generate turnovers that way, right? Because it's not necessarily you taking the ball away, but it's you just speeding a team up. And that leads to some good things defensively. And so I know, that this team is going to have to tighten up some other things. When you're talking about the rotations, you're talking about contesting shots, you're talking about, taking charges and things like that. That's all part of solid defense. But make no mistake about it, for the Bulls, they're going to have to start being disruptive. And I think you need an identity, and they can be disruptive this season. And so, if the Bulls can really lock in and play some defense, I think that this is going to help them take a major step forward. And also, too, I think another player that we have to really think about that could possibly, get into the mix, we're hoping that he does, even if his scoring doesn't take off, it would be Patrick Williams, right? So Patrick Williams has shown that he can defend at a high level before here in the past. I mean, last season was not the season for that, but you're hoping that, look, with the competition level that's going to be out there at the wing position, and then Billy Donovan knowing that he needs to get some defense on the floor, perhaps Patrick Williams is able to take advantage of that. And then, I think a pleasant surprise on the defensive end, it could be Noe Essengue, because if he's able to do the things that Buzelis did, early on last year, and just really what he was able to do towards the end with get the block shots and things like that, I definitely think that he can use his athleticism to help us out. And I also think that Billy Donovan really, he has a chance to kind of shake some things up with the interior defense, because I do think that that is probably going to be, I think the Bulls' weakness here. And so that means that you're going to have to rely on Zach Collins And you're also going to have to take a chance with Jalen Smith. And so I know that Jalen Smith really, he didn't have the biggest year last year, but I think he had a solid one, even though he didn't necessarily have a lot of opportunities towards the end of the season like we wanted to see. And so I think that he's a guy that, look, he can switch, he can run out there with you on the offensive end. And I think also, too, because he has that type of athleticism as a big and things like that, he can hang right in there and contest for you. And so I think that, Jalen Smith is a guy that perhaps can help us on the interior. But make no mistake about it, I think that the perimeter defense is going to be a lot more disruptive. And so, lastly, just with the importance and the concerns here, like the Bulls need to just nail this defensive stuff down, because if they don't, this is where you're going to be in trouble, because you have to get stops to win games. And I just think for the long term for this team, if they want to get past the play-in and then also to just make noise in the playoffs, you're going to have to have a defensive identity. And so I think it starts with being disruptive. And I think that this young core can do so. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments here, do you believe that the Chicago Bulls are in a good position this year with this young core to be defensively a lot better than they were a year ago? I do think that they are going to generate some more turnovers. Like I said before, the offense is going to mix in with the defense, because if you're a lot more efficient on your offense, you're cutting down the turnovers on your end, and then you're definitely going out there and maximizing this. You're either getting some good looks and finishing, or, hey, it's a good miss or whatnot, and you're able to get back and recover. Teams are not going to necessarily be able to play at that pace. And so if you can continue to keep that same energy on the offensive end and bring that to the defensive end, you're going to put some teams, in tough situations, especially if you're running like mini traps and stuff like that. By the time they get over to the half court line, the shot clocks kind of wound down. Then they have to make some quick decisions that way. Then that's where you use your athleticism, you use your length and things like that to just be disruptive. And hopefully, this team can get better with its principles, its rotations, its closeouts, taking more charges, sacrificing a lot more like that. And you're going to see some more wins for this team. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking. And as we always say, go Bulls. And I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.